Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon to my colleagues across the pond.
Dude, your screens are the wrong way around. You're showing the notes and everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to switch screens. I saw some switch screens here someplace. Let's try this one. Okay. Is that better for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start again. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to my colleagues across the pond. For those who don't know me, I'm Nelson Jordan. I'm based in Long Island, New York City, across the pond in good sunny, well, not so sunny New York City. Today's presentation is going to be responsible change management on your JIRA instances. Basically, it's a portion. It's been leveraged from the future of Atlassian automation discussions that Neil and Mark and many other individuals had and presented across the states and across several locations. Right. So one of the things that I like to start up with is I love this image. How many times have we made changes that either we think it's a small change, we think it's a not too disruptive change, or somebody taps us on the shoulders and say, hey, do me a favor, can you please promote this real quick? I need it. Whether it's a QA, a BA, or maybe a developer. And what we usually do is we test it in production, right? I'm not going to show raise of hands, but I know I've done it when I was a JIRA admin and when I was a ClearCase admin. We quickly made changes only to come back and bite us because we didn't follow the processes. So one of the things as an objective of this presentation is to introduce a standard methodology, a process, controls for managing your changes within JIRA. Right? So what does that mean? We're gonna show what is a business problem. How do we, from a business perspective, how do we successfully control, document, and replicate our changes in between multiple production JIRA environments? Now I'm starting out with JIRA because this is the first one that has first iteration or first session. The idea is to leverage this and push it on for the other changes, whether it's Confluence, Bitbucket, or Bamboo. That'll be coming in later sessions. So part of the agenda is there's a finite set of things to ensure that what you do in JIRA and you replicate it successfully across to your testing environment, to your production environment. Some of those are, you need some well-defined principles and practices. You need a well-defined solution components. And then lastly, we're going to do a presentation demo, which is basically going to be a presentation. So what some of the principles and practices that are needed? Well, you need to institute some good governance, right? You need some well-defined change management. Another key piece is you need to treat your code as configuration, configuration as code. We do a great job when it comes to development software, but when it comes to changing the environments in configuration, we don't do a great job as, treating that as code, right? And lastly, we need some promotional controls. So let's go a little bit deep on institute governance. So when it comes to making changes, what are some of the key items when we try to look at governance? Well, we want to define a common schema sets. If you have one-offs all over the place, you could tell it's going to be a lot more difficult to make changes and propagate. So the idea is to leverage common schema sets. You want to define standard nomenclatures, right? So if you have a custom field that's named ABC, you don't want to create another custom field that is a default JIRA field. You want to put some standard nomenclature in place that will help you to promote stuff. Right? You want to configure your project template to each schema set. You want to standardize and streamline your project creation. Now, this is something that I have quite a bit of partners and clients asking me how do they set an automation process to create project creation. They want to limit the number of people who actually create projects, and they want to standardize those project creations. One of the key pieces is try to standardize your project creation from the onset. And lastly, how do you maintain common configurations? Let's look a little bit deeper on change management principles. The first thing we want to do is you want to identify the changes. what's being changed, how it's being changed, what's being requested. You want to assess those changes. Does it make sense from a project perspective? Does it make sense from a business perspective? A lot of times, yes, it meets my project need, but then another project has a certain field. So now you're having 4 or 5 different fields, custom fields that are doing the same thing, and it becomes unmanageable. So you want to look at it not only from a project, but holistically from a business perspective as well. Lastly, you want somebody to approve it. Oh, we got a question. All right. Thanks, William. And you want to approve those changes. It's multiple levels of improvement. So you want to look at it from if it's going to impact the project, does it make sense? Do I get an approval from the project owner, the product owner? Do I get approval from the business owner as well? And lastly, what is approval from the administrative side of JIRA? You want to implement. So you want to implement those changes. And lastly, one piece that's really missing, a lot of organizations don't do this, is they want to follow up. So I implement it, I do a quick smoke test, and then I throw it over the fence and I don't see it again. No, you want to follow up because there may be some issues that you haven't caught, especially when you're doing some limited smoke testing. So you want to be able to follow up, make sure it, a week down the line that it's still acting as anticipated. And you can tell there is another change that comes into play, and it's a circle. It's an iterative process. Configuration as code. So you have your changes. You have your change management policies, but now you want to treat your changes as configuration. So in order to achieve this, you want to standardize your environment. It doesn't help if you have one environment where the home directory is different than another environment where you are on different ports. You want to standardize your environment across systems. You want to make your environment configuration should be automated, should be changed automatically. Changes need to be version control. So that's a big one. A lot of individuals or a lot of projects that we've seen, they make changes, but there is no control or versioning of those changes. So version your change, use a tool, whether it's a project configurator or some other tool that allows you to take a export of those changes and put it in some kind of version control system, whether it's Bitbucket or some other Git or some other SVN. Try to version those changes so you have some type of orderability across the changes. Keep the changes small and simple. A lot of times we may have 4 or 5 different requests coming in. A lot of times we make those changes and then we push it out and something goes wrong. Now you have to peel back the onion and identify what went wrong. Keep the changes small, keep them simple. Test your changes on the CI/CD process throughout the whole configuration process. So you make a change, put it out in your testing environment, test it. Don't make 4 or 5 different changes and then go back and say I want to test it before I promote it. Keep it simple. And changes need to be auditable. So by having your version control, exporting the changes, putting it in some kind of configuration tool, labeling it. Now you have a full system where you can go back and identify what was changed, who changed it, and what was the version of that particular change. And lastly, we come into promotions. So for promotions, there's some controls that need to be put in place to go from development to staging and production. Now, not all clients are going to have all three instances. Some of them may have a development/staging as one, and then they have a production server. So you want to standardize your environment so your promotion can be so you can automate your promotions. You want notifications. So whenever changes are replicated between one environment to the next environment, you want to be able to have those notifications sent to the admin, to the owner, to the QA testing team, whatever to test the environments. You want to be able to have a history of the changes. What's changed, when did it change, who changed it. You want the process to be repeatable. All right. So after we have our processes, our principles, the next thing we need to do is we need to add some tasks. So we have our process, we have our principles. We need to add some kind of activities associated with that to make the changes to go from our staging to our production environment. So one of the tasks that we need is somebody needs to submit a formal change request. Right? We need to change our JIRA configuration changes. We need to obtain approval. And lastly, we need to push to production. Right? When you make a change request, it needs to be some type of formal change request type. Now here I'm showing you JSD, but it has to, whether it's ServiceNow or some other service desk, it has to be captured and it has to be on a system. A lot of us have experience in the past where we get either a shoulder tap or we get an email or we get an IM. Can you please change that? That doesn't work in the long run because there's no history and you can't track it. There's no approval mechanism within that system. So you really want to use a formal standardized change request system. You want some of the common fields. You know, who requested it? What's there to make? What project, if any, is going to be impacted? Project or projects? And what's the business case for this? And lastly, who are the approvers to make these changes? Actually, want to stage some of your JIRA configure changes. You want the changes to be well formed. You want them documented correctly. You want to be able to identify, be able to read what changes are being requested. You want to do some impact and risk analysis. Again, it's not just at the project level. What about the business level? You want to make sure that it limits any business impact and identifies any risk upfront. You want to track your changes, version control and configuration updates, track configuration change history. You want to validate your changes. Right? After you make the change, you want to validate your changes. But more importantly, you validate your changes, but you want to make sure that it's a real simulation. So if you make changes on the field, on a custom field, and there's no data out there, it's not going to die. It's not going to fail. You might assume it's going to work, but when you move it into a production live environment with real data, it may fail. So you do want to be able to test your changes in as live as possible configuration, which means that you may have to take a dump every so often from the production environment and import the changes or import the data into your stage environment to have a similar production-like environment. So what are some of the things that typically in JIRA that you want to migrate or you want to modify? Right? It might be an issue type. It might be a workflow. You may modify different versions, components, roles. Here's a whole gamut of things that could be changed. Same thing at service desk. You can modify different request types, emails, SLAs, automations. Right? All these are examples of different queues of items that teams may want to be able to migrate or make changes between your staging, your dev, your staging, and production environment. And lastly, what are some of the solution components? Right, so you want to use JIRA to approve your own configuration changes. Right, so JIRA is this is where you start off with having a formalized change configuration management process is within JIRA itself. You have a well-documented format process. You want to have a simple workflow. Again, these are changes. These are not development processes. You want to do it's waiting, it's testing, it's pending approval, and finally it's done. You could automate stuff as a post request. It's very simplistic to keep it simple. And lastly, let's go to solution components. All right, so we have processes in place. We have activities in place. Why do we still have so many issues when it comes to JIRA deployment? You know, we usually say it worked in development. It was just a simple change. What happened? It shouldn't have broke it. Oh shoot, can we change it back quickly? That's not what I asked for. And finally, who changed it? Why did we change it? So what are we missing? What's the missing piece? We have our processes, we have our principles, we have identified activities and tasks that we need to do in order to promote this. We're missing automation. So you could have the best processes in place, you could have the best checklist of tasks to do, but you're still introducing human error, human intervention. And as we know, anytime you introduce human intervention, it's bound to have some errors associated with that. So the last thing is automation is the big piece that's missing. Very similar to the old time creating a Model A car. It's a very manual change management model. It's not consistent. It's extremely labor intensive. It's very costly because you have the JIRA admins constantly having to make changes manually, back things out, go back and modify some of the human errors that was introduced into the system by manual changes. It's very risky. It's not repeatable. And lastly, it's not really auditable because it's a manual process. So let's put all those actions together. Let's put a principle and practice together. Let's put the activities from the sample components, and let's put the automation in place. So let's do a simple demo and show you how all these together come into play. For the demo solution component, we're going to use JSD for our submit request change request. To stage JIRA configurations, we're going to use Project Configurator, and for automation, we're going to use Script Runner. Now, I've had other clients to use Botron, and they're currently using Botron with Script Runner as well. A little bit about Project Configurator. It's an add-on to move configuration between JIRA instances. It's also a major change management for JIRA administration. So a lot of our colleagues, a lot of our clients know that Project Configurator is critical for moving projects between different instances. They're not really so keen on understanding that it's also a key piece when it comes to change management, especially for JIRA administration and JIRA changes. It was launched in 2013, and it joined our family in the summer of 2017 last year. We have over 2,300 installations, and it supports not only JIRA, but JIRA Service Desk and JIRA software. A little bit of Script Runner. We all know we have, right now, I believe it's over 20,000 installations, and it also supports JIRA software, JIRA Service Desk, and JIRA Core. There is a server and cloud offering, but this solution is just going to be focusing on the server offering. All right, so let's start out with a change request. I'm going to come in. I want to add a new issue type, a new queue, a new SLA, whatever. Here's my business case. I have new employees. I want to add 40 hours. I want to add a new SLA for 40 hours, 9 to 5. And the approver is going to be William. All right. As you notice, I have my development environment. I already created everything manually. It's a new employee. I created the new JQL, the new SLAs in here. I have 40 hours, calendar 9 to 5. I have a new queue for new hires. If you look at the target system, nothing's there. Everything's missing. Right? It hasn't been promoted yet. You're looking at the issue type. It's not there. The JQL, again, it's currently not promoted into the target environment. I come in here. I approve it. I can create it, and I can approve the migration, and boom, it kicks off. And as you can tell, what we do is it has audit logs. It puts it at the JIRA instance itself and the JIRA issue type. You have the audit logs of what's going on. But what we also do, and it's a post function. It's running after a post function. There's a log on the JIRA side itself after it executes. But more importantly, what we also do is we take those changes and we add them into Confluence as a record of all the changes associated with all the change configuration. So not only do we have the audit log inside of the issues, but we also have the changes in the space sequentially. So we have change 1, change 2, change 3. Now we don't have a date associated to here, but we could definitely add a date associated. If you ever want to take a look at all the changes associated with JIRA, you go into the simple page, you go into the date, and you can see what exactly has changed. So this is part of the audit feature. As you can tell, now we have all open. We have the new hires on the bottom. And this is the target. It's been promoted. We have the new issue type on the target instance. And again, you have the JQL and the SLAs that's been promoted. All right. In summary, right, change configuration management in JIRA requires multiple best practices to be adopted. You need governance. You need change control. You need to treat your code as configuration changes. Treat it as configuration as code. Put it in, version it, have some history, make it auditable. Otherwise, you you won't have the governance in place, and you won't be able to track what happened if anything has gone wrong. You want some promotion controls, but you also want automation. Assign ownership of the shared configurations, right? Involve a standard and control manner. So your standards may change, that's okay, but you want to make sure it evolves in a standard, precise manner and follows good practices and standard nomenclature. And one of the key pieces, automation is key. You can have the best governance in place, you can have the best change control processes in place, but if you don't have automation, you're going to introduce human error, which will lead to issues. All right. And if anybody's interested, we have a video that Mark McCormick put together. I won't show it this time, but if you want, we'll be part of the presentation. All right, thank you. Any questions, comments? I see. Does a proposed solution account for scripted components as part of configuration yet? Which part of the scripting does PC handle? How might one best manage the rest? Can you clarify what exactly?
So the parts around like script runner segments on the workflows for in particular, or if we handle any of migration like behaviors tied to screens as well.
No.
So that's on the roadmap, but it's not available yet. What PC does out of the box right now is built-in components of Script Runner. None of the custom components. We hard-coded that as part of the integration of PC. But going forward, we're looking at the best way to implement things like behaviors. But likewise, we're looking at other add-ons for third-party integrations as well.
Okay.
Including Riata and Tempo, I think, are up on the top. There are docs. There are docs in the Script Runner documentation on how to migrate these kinds of things. Well, for anything that we do have a good answer for, unfortunately, that's still going to be kind of a separate process until we can put that on the roadmap.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. From the administrative perspective, one of the key features that I'm looking forward to is the integration with Smart Drawer. So not only do you have your change configuration, but as a JIRA admin, I want to take a look at certain features that, for instance, my custom fields. What are my custom fields associated with? Are they offering custom fields? Now I know Project Configurator has that output in a format. But it'd be nice to look at it visually to see exactly what's missing or what's an offering or where is it associated with as a visual presentation. That's the next piece that I want to try to introduce into not only from a change management perspective, but looking at your data as well.
Yeah. And it's Abdul here. And Insight for Riata actually gives you that kind of visualization. And it's asset management. They focus on asset management, but they have a data import for JIRA, where it allows you to see all the permissions and all the connection between your schemes and schemas and screens and so on in JIRA.
Oh, nice.
There's two pieces of that. What Riata is trying to do is to give you a vision of your current state. What they don't do is give you that vision of what is going to change. And we've heard a lot of people wanting that to basically be able to say, okay, if I execute this change, what's the thing that's going to happen? Or even going back through history, show me the change for each one of these things over time. I think Insight does a bit of this, but we do need to invest a lot more into kind of what the actual look of the change will be, and kind of what are all the touch points if I want to look at, let's say, an individual project in the middle of a configuration move. You know, what am I actually going to go impact?
Yeah, makes sense. I agree with you on that one. It's just also the Porton. They allow you to move pieces from one instance to another instance by REST API. Is the project configurator has a REST API for like to call to do stuff?
This is the problem with DemoWare. So the way Mark has set up this demo is he's basically bolted on a REST API using Script Runner. So the REST API doesn't come from PC itself. However, REST API is actually one of those things on the roadmap as well.
Okay.
To go do inside of PC. That being said, next week we're going to release the Java API publicly. It should actually be in a lockdown page on Doco now, which we can send out to the group at large if you're interested in using it. But the ability to write your own custom REST API using script runner will come from that kind of public one. And I think Christian actually has already put together a number of examples for this already.
Yeah.
To answer Kyle's question as well, in this demo, we've hard-coded a drop-down list to say this is the exact thing that I want to change in this very specific project. If we were to put this out more publicly for customers to use, we'd have to come up with a clever way to make that kind of distinction, or at least let an admin kind of pick in their workflow what they would actually want to be able to promote, which is not as easy as it sounds. So when it comes to DemoWare, this is absolutely pretty, but to get it to that point where it could be configurable publicly, it still needs quite a bit of work.
Is that something that we could integrate Smart Draw with, and just to make that more visible?
Define integrate?
Create a SDON so you see the changes.
Yeah, I mean because you have that output from PC and you'll get that via the Java API anyway. Anyone on this call at the moment who's played around with the Smart Draw sort of SDON building, there's some examples Mike Brown and Phil Fox have put together. You absolutely could go do that today. That's a thing that's possible. It's just a question of how long it's going to take for the PC team at large to be able to put that out as something in a library that someone can go use. But yeah, using the Java API, you could absolutely go do that. And it's essentially just take the output that you normally get, form it in JSON the way that SDON likes to read it.
Neil, what about going the other way? If we have the visual output and we make changes on the Smart Draw, could it possibly execute a change in JIRA?
So it's interesting about that. The thing about going the opposite direction is you'd have to be able to tell, you'd have to be able to write that map between relationships inside of a Smart Draw document into an actual set of actions. If your question is it possible? Yes. Is it something that's easy? I don't think so. And is it something I'd be very concerned about putting in the hands of people to go do? Absolutely. I think you could probably draw out something similar to what you want, and try to do a diff between Smart Draw documents. That's possible, but it's going into territory that is just uncharted. I'm happy to help you look into it though, if that's something you're interested in kind of doing.
Yeah, I actually I took your presentation and I had clients wanting to know about change management, so I put this together for them and showed them how the automation piece works. And one of the pieces that keep coming out is this is great, but how do I represent my data in the graphical representation? And that's when I started looking at SDON, Smart Draw.
Yeah, definitely. So there's two ways to think about that. One is you can use SDON to be the driver of those changes. That's possible. But actually, what might be a better way to do this is to say, embed a Smart Draw document in this change management ticket. And actually, you can show whatever that change would be from the dropdowns. You can basically infer what you're actually going to go change in prod. And then from there, on the ticket itself, you would have a visual representation of what's about to happen. So I think that probably would be one of the best ways to go show that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we were talking to Atlassian's IT service management kind of pre-sales engineer, a guy called Paul Buffington, yesterday actually. And he was very much saying exactly what you're saying, Nelson, that this is the kind of path a lot of people want to go down to visually represent this. So I think we're going to be investing a bit and trying to build some kind of DemoWare which incorporates that visual element. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you because I'd love to be involved in that.
Absolutely. We'd love to help, as always.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody have any follow-up questions? Like always, I want to put a big shout out to William, who helped me create this originally for Boston. Mark and Neil, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. Anytime.
Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Take care.
Thanks, man.